Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tarot and Attachment. So I usually do the full moon and new moon readings on my Instagram page, but Instagram has changed their policy and they will no longer let me do a live reading. So I'm going to do it here instead. Tomorrow we are going to be having a full moon in the sign of Aquarius. And I thought I would take this opportunity to look into the archetypal themes that might be emerging around this time, give us a sense of some of the things that may be coming up in our lives, both personally and collectively, because of this transit. So, full moon is interesting in that it is always an opposition between the sun and the moon. New moons are when the two are conjoined, which is why it's a dark moon. When the moon sits directly opposite the sun, then it has the ability to reflect the full light of the sun, hence it is full. And oppositions have a very different energy than a conjunction or a trine. Oppositions tend to hold attention. And in this case, it means that because the full moon is occurring in the sign of Aquarius, that the sun is in Leo. These are signs that are opposite on the zodiacal wheel. And so, some of the themes, the archetypal themes associated with Aquarius is ruled by the planets, both Saturn and Uranus, which are interesting, even in that respect, because those two are sometimes divergent energies. Saturn is the father of time. He tends to build character through challenges or limitations. He's associated with wisdom. But sometimes those limitations can also, create boundaries, which are frustrating for us as human beings. We don't like limits so much. And Aquarius tends to be a lot more volatile, like the sudden flash of insight that one might have, the complete and utter shift from one direction to another. And it tends to be correlated, or is often correlated with technology. So technological advances, sudden shifts in thinking or belief systems, big changes that affect us in core ways. So these energies, and then, Aquarius is often associated with the collective. So we might think of this in terms of, as a collective, we are shifting our belief system in a radical, dramatic, and instantaneous way. That is one way that you could imagine the expression could come through at this time. But let's see what the cards have to say about this and what insight they might offer to us in terms of making the most of this time that we find ourselves in. So I'm going to go silent. I'm going to concentrate while I shuffle, and I will be with you momentarily. I'm going to say a prayer over these cards. So, not too surprisingly, I suppose, here is the star. The star represents the sign of Aquarius in the tarot. And the way that I think about the star is it is finding your divine place in the universe. It is clearing the channel of all limiting self-beliefs so that you can be this clear conduit for spirit. So that everything you do in the material realm is imbued with this higher sense of purpose. So I sometimes associate the star with soulmates and soul calling. It is this very purified energy that allows us to show up in the world in our most authentic expression of soul self. And so knowing that Aquarius is associated with the mind, I think what it's being said here is that if we can become aware of our narratives born out of old experience that really no longer serve us, that are no longer accurate representations of who we need to be in the world of today, that if we can become aware of these narratives and let them go, understand that they are no longer necessary for us to lead with to navigate the world, then we are capable of bringing something new in a very concrete, material way. That this is a time to plant seeds of the highest level of clarity around what it is that we wish to create. Pentacles are earthbound. They represent the material manifestation of things that we need in this embodied form in order to thrive. And aces represent this very distilled energy. It's like the highest octave of an energy. It's like getting a divine download from the universe. These two are speaking to one another in order to create the most divine form. Then we have to purify our own thinking. We have to be available to receive the truth. And in doing so, we have the ability to plant seeds that will materially manifest the most fruitful outcome. And ultimately, you can think of the Queen of Pentacles as being a kind of Earth Mother. In some ways, she has some similar energies to the Empress. She is masterful in her approach. She is mature in the ways of the world. She has enough experience and wisdom to make things happen in the best possible way. And her promise is all the seeds that get planted will blossom and bear fruit. And so I want to go back to this idea of how to harness the energies of the moon cycle, because many times when people are trying to manifest things, they want to do it around a new moon. And the reason that this is the case is that we're harnessing the energies of growth. As the moon moves through its cycle, it grows steadily towards its full state. So you can think about the full moon as the culmination of intentions that were set around the new moon. So here we are at a full moon that is in the sign of Aquarius. So it's asking us to reflect on our thoughts, the way that we communicate these ideas and the belief systems that we hold that are the root source of that idea or intention. We're being asked to look at all of that. And because this is a full moon, we might even want to consider what beliefs have we fostered that were born out of past experience that are not healthy for us to hold anymore. Oftentimes, these belief systems are rooted in early childhood, when we are developing our sense of self out of the conditions that we're raised within. So if you are a person who grew up in a household where your needs weren't met in a good enough way, you might have internalized this idea that there's something wrong with me, that if I were enough, if I were lovable, I would be able to get my needs met. Now, that's a very sophisticated idea. I'm not suggesting that as infants, we are capable of that kind of cognitive narrative. It's unconscious. It's unconscious based on feelings, based on the longing to have a need met. Like, I'm hungry, I'm cold, I'm lonely, I feel frightened. And when no one comes, when no one tends to these needs, we feel it deeply. It feels like a kind of panic, a kind of threat to our very existence. And as that gets taken into our somatic experience, and as we develop in later years, we start to construct a solid sense of self out of that sensory experience of abandonment. So it is reasonable to say that someone who had turbulent or conditions or was deprived in some way of their basic needs as children may have this deeply held belief, even if it's held in the unconscious, that I am not enough, that I am not enough to get my needs met, that I am not lovable, there is something wrong with me. And I'm going to suggest that this full moon gives us the opportunity to see that narrative clearly, to own that within ourselves, within our own experience, maybe even to notice how that has played out through our history, what the results of planting seeds of that belief have yielded. Maybe there have been broken relationships. Maybe there have been lost job opportunities. Maybe there has been some painful repeating pattern within family of origin. It is helpful to reflect, to look back, to contemplate what those patterns might be and what the underlying belief system that's driving those patterns to repeat might be as well. And once we have unearthed this old belief system through contemplation, the Four of Swords is taking respite from the battle of life. It's being in reflective repose. It is a kind of meditation, a kind of stillness where we look over the course of our life in order to reflect on these patterns. And the Ten of Swords is the closing of a chapter, never to be returned to again. A time of great mental anguish comes to a close as a result of identifying that old belief system and recognizing that it is not serving us in a good way, to become willing to let it go, to become purified. Once we set down that narrative, we can begin to imagine what it is that we might wish to create. If I were to want the opposite, for instance, again, if we're going back into looking at the patterns of life, ruptured or broken relationships, if I would like to achieve the opposite, meaningful, consistent, collaborative partnerships, what beliefs would I need to hold in order to manifest that outcome in the material world? What would I have to believe? I would have to believe that I am whole, that I am lovable, that there is nothing wrong with me, that I am in fact this perfect conduit for spirit, that as I begin to surrender these limiting self-beliefs, I am capable of creating a world, both personal and collective, that serves the highest good. So this is really about identifying these limiting self-beliefs and allowing them to die. Spirit is saying that this is not a time for us to go it alone, that we have carried the burden of our lives long enough. It is time to work in community with others. This is the promise of Aquarius, that we are breaking our backs by being singular in our approach to life. It is depleting our life force energy. We need one another. We need these social support networks in order to foster healthy and vibrant change. And this has to be done from an authentic place. So again, all this sword energy, right? It's asking us to look at what our thoughts are conveying about what we believe of ourselves, of the world at large, and what the fruits of that are. Because remember, we live in a karmic universe. What we think influences the actions we take, which then influences the creative outcomes. So if we want change in the world, we have to start with our belief systems. And so the Seven of Swords is what I call the people-pleasing card, right? So in order to be a good community member, I have to come from a place of authentic truth. I have to know myself. I have to be willing to take responsibility for my own reactions, my own beliefs, understand how they're affecting and influencing things that are going on out in the world in front of me. But I also have to stay true to my thoughts and feelings as I experience them. So it's not enough for me to figure out what I need to be in order to make you want me. So if I am willing to abandon my truth in order to please others, that this will inevitably not have the most effective outcome in building secure, healthy community structures out in the world. People tend to recognize when they're being played, when they're being lied to. Look at sort of what is happening with us politically right now. There have been a lot of promises made that were not delivered on. They were falsely made in order to invoke or elicit a certain response. In order to garner allies, promises were made falsely. And that this has a way of eroding trust, right? You can't build healthy relationships by promising to be what the other person wants when that is not an authentic expression of yourself. You won't be able to deliver, and even if you could, it would be inauthentic. It would be exhausting. It would be alienating, because you would in fact have to disown your truth in order to be something for someone else. And ultimately, what I'm going to suggest that that's part of that old distorted belief system that I'm not enough as I am. I have to figure out what you want me to be in order to have that deep connection in life. And in fact, it's pretty much the opposite. If I am willing to be reflective and honest about who I am, if I'm willing to get rid of these old ideas that were constructed out of situations, painful situations often, that have distorted my vision and have allowed me to show up in the world as less than I really truly am. If I can clear all that out, then there is this possibility of creating a world of beauty and abundance where each and every person can get their needs met in the most magnanimous way. That is the vision that I wish to hold. And Spirit is asking me what beliefs I need to let go of in order to bring that into being. So that is the message for this full moon. It's happening tomorrow. I believe it's happening around noon on the West Coast. So maybe take some time this evening to reflect on what patterns you have seen in your own life that you are ready to shift or change in a dramatic way. And what beliefs do you need to let go of in order to allow that to happen? And maybe we can hold this vision of collective reciprocity. I would love to see that come into being now more than ever. Yeah. So I am wishing you many blessings on this full moon. Take care.